Sekeres and Price for Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. We're a presentation of Bet365. Check out Bet365's early goal, 3-goal early payout. There we go. When your team goes up 3, you get paid. It's that simple. Easy for me to say. Download the app today. Must be 19 plus, please. Play responsibly. Coming to you from the Pacific Toyota Dealer Studio here at the historic Wall Center. Visit shoptoyota.ca. Visit your local Pacific Toyota dealer. It's Red Tag Days. Matt Sekeres alongside Jeff Paterson, sitting in for Blake Price again today. 4-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things in the booth. How are you?
I'm good. There was a time, a long time ago, when game day actually mattered, and I used to get excited. Well, it is a game day, but now the interesting stuff is happening around.
How are you dealing with this, buddy? Because we talk about it usually at the beginning of the season that, you know, Jeff is a game-oholic. Like there are few people I know who look forward to the hockey game day and the actual 2.5 hours themselves as you, my friend. So how are you holding up during this season where so many of the game days have failed to deliver? And as you say, where so many of the game days seem a little less relevant these days.
Not well. Not well. This season has taken a lot out of me. I'm going to be honest. Trying to host Rinkwide after every game when the interest went out the window essentially a couple of weeks after Quinn Hughes got traded. The second half of the season has been a grind. And I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. We're talking and covering hockey for a living. It's a good gig. But this season, I was thinking about this the other day. Like, this season has taken some miles off me.
Well, it is one of the worst seasons in Vancouver Canucks history. It is one of the worst home seasons in Vancouver Canucks history. We got 13 left, buddy. Okay, so the finish line is in sight.
We'll get there. But
I'll tell you what, and I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this for a few weeks now. Look, what Marco Rossi is doing is terrific. He's on quite a heater right now, and it's great to see him finally paying some dividends since the Quinn Hughes trade. But we knew he was an NHL player, and we knew he was a good NHL player. What I'd love to see in the final 13 games is one of or several of these young, still prospect, not quite fully formed NHLers put their stake in the ground and declare themselves as not just NHL regulars, but good NHL players. Like, we need a heater from Zeev Buium or Liam Ogren or someone in that category, Jeff, I think, to at least give us some good tidings on the way out of this dreadful 2025-26 campaign.
I'd like to see it too. I mean, I'm not expecting it just because this team as a whole doesn't score. The idea that Zeev Buium all of a sudden is going to get on a heater, he would probably need some guys around him to finish. I don't expect that he's going to score a bunch of goals, but he might be able to create some offense. But then you need Elias Pettersson to put a puck in the net. Jake DeBrusk, Matt, has gone 7 games without a point again. Like, just no goals. Jake
the
DeBrusk
lows are so low with this player. It's unreal.
And so, I mean, I'm with you, and I'm here for it. But the other part is, again, if people haven't bothered to look ahead at what's left on the schedule, they've got some really difficult opponents. And so I just think that it's going to be more of the same. They're going to keep on keeping on, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of wins between now and season's end.
Let me reposition for you. It's probably too much to ask someone like Tom Wielander or Elias Pettersson, EPD, to go on an offensive heater. As we know, that's not necessarily their games. What about a goaltending heater from Nikita Tolopilo, Jeff?
Well, he'd have to play first. And I don't get it. I don't.
We're going to get into this, but please don't just put Tolopilo on the bench and use him as a traditional backup the rest of the way.
I asked Adam Foote a couple of weeks back.
Here's your time to experiment. Here's your time to look and to develop. The results don't matter.
Well, I asked Adam Foote a couple of weeks ago, does the organization need to give Nikita Tolopilo a run of games, something that he's not had in the National Hockey League? And Foote said, I don't know that we need to give him a run. Kevin Lankinen is starting for the 4th straight game tonight.
He gave Tolopilo an itty-bitty run, and then
2.
he questioned his decision about giving Tolopilo a run.
Yeah, last we've seen of him.
Yeah.
That was Seattle. The Seattle game
into it.
over a week ago.
We'll get into it, but we'll start, as always, with the daily poll question today. Should Canucks chairman Francesco Aquilini hold an end-of-season press conference? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. I was struck as I was reading Thomas Drance's piece yesterday in The Athletic with regards to the way forward here, the off-season, and this line in particular. Mike's got it on the screen. We'll get it up here in a second. Canucks fans deserve some level of clarity from the organization, and it has to come from above hockey operations leadership. He would go on to write, in seeking to regain the trust, Canucks ownership owes its customers some forthright clarity about the direction of this franchise. Bottom line, the jig is up. Years of mismanagement and shortcuts to contention have finally caught up to the club, as many predicted years ago. It's time to acknowledge failure, fall on the sword, and take responsibility. Now, Aquilini's Q rating amongst fans is in the toilet and has been for many years, since several management groups have been forced to march to the no rebuild orders. This would be an opportunity to repair some of that damage with an honest, forthright mea culpa and clear communication of the plan going forward. It's a nightmare season for the Canucks. Ticket prices are going up for some season ticket holders. We'll get into that. Is it time to hear from the boss of bosses, Jeff, and have him answer some questions about everything that has taken place?
Should he? Yes, absolutely. Will he? Probably not. I've said this before. Like, I don't need Francesco Aquilini to be Jerry Jones or Mark Cuban or somebody that's seeking out the limelight in an ownership position. But when I think of the millions and millions of dollars that this fan base, that this market has lined the family pockets with forever, there has to be some accountability. And this year has been different. There have been other bad years. We know that. We've lived through them. This has been different. Look at the standings.
You moved out the best player, arguably, in the history of the franchise.
Right.
He didn't want to be here.
And so now you've come to this conclusion that it's time to rebuild. I'd be curious to know how much convincing, what ultimately allowed you to relent this time when others have gone down that road. So, I think there's a ton of questions. We know it's not something that Francesco Aquilini likes to do.
No.
And there is the possibility, and we'll get into this with John Shannon, that those opportunities can go sideways.
Oh, for sure. And I think he's a little bit scared based on the way some of these have gone in the past, going all the way back to the firing of Dave Nonis, which we also get into with John Shannon, the few times that he has spoken publicly since taking ownership of the club, majority ownership of the club some 20 years ago on behalf of the family. And look, we used to ask this from time to time back in our radio station days, and a lot of fans would message us back and say, oh, God, no, I really don't want to hear from him. They like to just enjoy the hockey team from a pure sporting prism and not have to consider the ownership and the business side, which, of course, the owner represents when he steps forward to speak publicly. But here's the thing. Gentleman who was a long-time sports business executive at the onset of my career, and thankfully so, because it really helped in terms of how you go about covering these games or covering these teams. It is a business first and foremost, right? None of this would be here if there wasn't money at stake for someone. And it's a unique business in that it is not selling a traditional good or service. You could argue it's selling a service, a couple hours of entertainment, 82 times a year. But it is unique in this regard. When the chairman of Coca-Cola pulls into work every day, as brand loyal as many people are to Coca-Cola, there aren't fans in Coca-Cola sweaters and with sign, Go Coca-Cola, beat Pepsi. A sports business requires the emotional affection and investment of your local community. And so, a good franchise owner should periodically make himself available to local media, to the community via local media, and hang in there and answer questions about the club. Yeah, oftentimes they have a designated spokesperson, whether that's a president on the business side, although Michael Doyle never speaks publicly either, or on the hockey side. And in the case of Jim Rutherford, he has spoken publicly a fair bit.
But not recently. Recently. Matt, Jim Rutherford has not met with the Vancouver media since, and he didn't even do it the night that they traded Quinn Hughes. He handpicked a couple of guys to be on a phone call with. We haven't heard from Jim Rutherford in months. So this idea that he
continues to want to do Toronto media, which is something. There's a lot of things that Rutherford hasn't gotten about Vancouver and British Columbia, and that's one of them.
Yeah. So
like he wants to talk to his old buddies in Toronto because when he was in Carolina for years and nobody cared locally about the team, he was a very good conduit source of information and always available to Toronto media because he's a Toronto guy. And I think he liked the limelight. He sought the limelight that just wasn't there in Raleigh.
I assume we'll get a year-end availability.
I would think so.
But I'm not.
But here's the difference this year, Jeff, and here's why I think it's an appropriate time for the chairman, Aquilini, to step forward. First of all, I mean, if you're a leader, showing accountability, showing responsibility, being there then in the tough times, that's where leaders are made, right? It's easy to be there when you're in the Stanley Cup final agreeing to interviews about, oh, what a marvelous job you've done and, hiring good people and setting the direction of the team. But it's when things are going poorly, that is the test of your mettle. That's the test of your integrity. And in the case of this year, you've got so much uncertainty. You've got a 77-year-old president of hockey operations who has mused about how long he's going to be here. You have an embattled general manager who has gotten in trouble with the fans this year with some of the word salads. We're going to retool it a little bit in a hybrid form. Like what? You have clearly an overmatched head coach who, yesterday, we talked about this, March 23rd, 69 games in, is working on second period line changes, the long change at practice. And you have young talent in your organization managerially in the form of Ryan Johnson, who, of course, Calder Cup champion with the Abbotsford Canucks, and his head coach, Manny Malhotra, who was, of course, a beloved player here once upon a time as well. So I think you have a confluence of factors here that really make the time right for the owner to speak. Like he can take, if he does plan to keep Rutherford and Alvin going forward, he can take some of the heat and the questions about them away with a successful press conference. Now, press conferences, of course, are the highest order because guys like you get to ask really poignant questions. Would a letter, would a social media post suffice? Because we used to hear from Francesco on social media.
Yeah, he had a presence there.
Exactly.
And we've seen the letter in years gone by, and I guess I anticipate that that's how he is going to choose to communicate. And again, in a market like this one, if it's a letter, it is going to be examined. Every sentence, every word choice. And if that's all we get to digest from the owner, then of course it's going to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb. I'm with you. I mean, trust me, I would love to have the opportunity to ask Francesco Aquilini some questions, see him around the rink on occasion, but the idea of him sitting there prepared to take some difficult questions and pointed questions, I'm just not sure that the appetite is there.
Is the last time he did a presser the day he hired Jim Rutherford? Do I have that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so, I mean, once every 4 years is not too much to ask, right?
Well, again, especially in an historic year like this one.
Exactly. Your customers are angry.
You've traded away a franchise player.
Right.
You made a decision.
Right.
You couldn't support that franchise player.
So stand in there.
You've dropped to the bottom of the standings.
And you're raising ticket prices, which we'll get to. So
the practice facility.
Stand in there take the bullets for one afternoon, right? Show your organization that you're there with them, not just in the good times, but in the bad times. And the other thing you might do, you might actually convince some people and get them on board for the plan going forward. We've talked about this, Jeff. This is a very savvy hockey market, one of the most savvy hockey markets. The online presence in British Columbia and Vancouver and the discussion and the debate that goes on around the hockey club is unparalleled pound for pound, citizen for citizen across the hockey world. So you have a winning argument to make here, Francesco. Some of these folks have been baying for a rebuild for the better part of a decade. You can't fix the missteps of the past. And yeah, you're going to have to account for those if you do a presser. But you can light the pathway going forward and get more people back on the bandwagon. I know this is an organization that understands goodwill all that much, operates on a very transactional basis, but I do think that's going to have to change if you're going through a several-year rebuild. And let's face it, this looks every bit of a several-year rebuild. For example, just in the YouTube chat here today, and folks watching on YouTube, that Super Chat button is always available to you. Hit it, make your donation. Half proceeds to the BC Mental Health Foundation. We'll make sure we get it on the program. This is Richard, who says, been a fan since day one. That last game versus the Blues was disgusting. 19-2 shot attempts at one point in the first. Player, coaches, managements, owners should be completely ashamed. This is the NHL, except it isn't the NHL when it looks like that on Saturday. And you're going to have some of these games going forward in a rebuild. That's part of what you sign up for with a rebuild. So now that the team is finally doing it for the first time in its history, or at least the first time since the salary cap when rebuild became a thing, became a strategy to championship building, cup building. I do think you have the elements and the conditions at play here that a press conference from the owner is necessary, is appropriate, and could, believe it or not, even do well by the brand if executed properly. Yes or no? Do you want to hear from Francesco? Should he hold a year-end press conference? Vote at the Sekeres and Price X and YouTube channels. Let's get to our top story. JPat, it's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Season ticket renewal notices are out. Prices are going up. And the Canucks are hearkening a new era, promoting a young core and tons of draft picks. In some ways, club messaging is finally acknowledging, Jeff, a proper rebuild and the road ahead. This is not something that has happened in the past, right? This is new. There's one paragraph that leads to ambiguity we'll discuss in a moment. But here it is. Season ticket holders getting notices this week about their 26-27 seats. Some are starting to post to social media indicating that the prices of their seats are going up. But here's the notice for those of you on visual platforms. The Canucks wrote, quote, now we're building the next generation with 10 picks, 2 of which are in the first round. Pair that with a young core ready to break through, and the next era of Canucks hockey is here. You said you would parse. They put it on paper. Parse away. There is no better parser in Vancouver than this gentleman right here.
Come with me. Put it back up on the screen there, Mike. We're going right to the first 2 words. Every period. Every shift. Every period. Not the second period. Not the second period this season, I can tell you. Your passion, energy, and belief are what make Rogers Arena home. There is, no acknowledgement that this season's in the sewer. There is no acknowledgement of the pain that these people have paid for to have the privilege of watching the Canucks win 8 home games. No contrition, no acceptance, no ownership of the season that is. So that right there. And again, these are their best constituents. These are the people that are bucking up and writing big checks, although nobody writes checks anymore. But so I don't know. Right now, they lost me with the first every period bit. But if we fast forward through the rest of it, And I don't know about the additional perks. I don't know what they've done to make their season ticket members, dedicated season ticket members, feel better about things. But they point to a number of
the resale program last year, Jeff. That was the step forward.
Okay.
And yes,
Good on
there's
them.
no specifics here.
But
I also wondered, what does we leveled up our existing programming and launched a new series of member exclusive?
right, and I don't. They have you can skate at Rogers Arena. They have open practices for season ticket members. They do meet and greets. Like, there are some programs there are perks that come with being pay that much, you pay to play. I get all of that, but to the line that you're pointing to here, yes, you can't argue. Right now, they've got 10 picks in the 2026 draft. 2 of them are in the first round. A young core ready to break through. Who? Like, we know that they've got some young players. Is that a young core?
They didn't name check them, but I think we know the names.
Yeah, but is that a young core? Like, those guys could be gone next year. Like, we don't know that they're core members of the next wave of Canucks hockey.
You don't think Rossi, William,
I don't know.
Villander?
I can't sit here today and say those guys are going to be part of this when they come out of the wilderness on the other side. They are the pieces that they've got now.
Sure.
But look at this Anaheim team.
They have gotten in trouble in the past with name-checking guys, so I do wonder whether they demurred and didn't want to go
right. But like
down
Anaheim,
a deep list.
Anaheim thought Trevor Zegras and
Right.
Jamie Drysdale,
Yeah,
like
fair.
those kind of guys. Like
Fair.
these are assets, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be here. Anyways, so just the idea that, but I think the bigger picture is this young core that's ready to break through what? The 20-win barrier?
Well, the breakthrough part is the part I would like to focus on for a second here. And it's funny because maybe they listen to this show, because last week we talked about Elias Pettersson, a 2-goal game. Break out or break through. There is a distinction, right? Anyone can break out in a singular game. But a breakthrough means it's consistent, right? That you've overcome challenges and now
Things
it's onwards
changed.
and onwards and upwards. So when they write a young core ready to break through, I'm not sure that statement landed with all fans because, of course, they're so skittish about what's the next shortcut. Where are we going to try and juice and accelerate the rebuild artificially? Does this suggest another fast tracking, Jeff? Could it suggest another fast tracking when they highlight a young core ready to break through?
Sure, it could. I mean, it says the next era of Canucks hockey is here. Now, again, this is written by somebody in the marketing department. This isn't Jim Rutherford at a keyboard.
But it would get vetted all the way up, right?
Fair
Because
enough.
this is the sort of statement that
Yeah.
this is the sort of
And- but- and
statement
they
your
would all
local
say,
media
"Yeah, this
talks
sounds-
about.
this sounds
As you
great."
say, these are their absolute core customers. So if you're vetting Chris Faber articles, you should absolutely be vetting this all the way up to the chairman's level.
Right. But you probably ought to put a name to it as well. Right? It was just a mass marketing to your season ticket
It should come
members.
from the desk of Michael Doyle or the desk of Francesco Aquilini. Absolutely.
And again,
gives it more
people
weight.
may ask,
And
why are you guys making such a... Because it's all we've got to go on. This is the only kind of material we ever hear from anybody.
But, Jeff, I've been saying it for a while. Aquilini and Doyle are afraid of their fans right now. They're scared of their public right now.
Sure, well, the
that
brand has taken a
manifests in
beating
so
this
many
year.
ways. So I can understand either of them wanting to put their name on this. That would be good process. That would let everybody know, okay, this comes from the desk of the owner or this comes from the desk of the president.
But if the next era of Canucks hockey is here, the most recent evidence of that is Saturday afternoon when they had 2 shots on goal. Or whatever it was.
The timing is unfortunate.
Well, this season, I'm not sure that there would have been a good time.
Fair enough.
There's a really good comment here. It's kind of silly, but it can show Aquilini how fans do math.
All right.
Cut it up on the screen. When a beer costs $20, I can afford 1. When it costs $7, I can afford 10.
Look, I don't want to belabor this, but there was a time when Canucks Sports and Entertainment was best in class in the National Hockey League. that not only was it one of the great businesses in the National Hockey League with a huge long sellout streak and incredible merchandising revenues, they were a leader in online presence. Like Canucks.com got more hits than any other team website. In fact, I believe at one point Canucks.com was getting more traffic on a daily basis than like a number of the other teams combined in the National Hockey League. They had such strong department heads on, whatever file you wanted to go to, whether it was building operations with Harvey Jones, whether it was on the PR side with TC Carling, whether it was on the online side. They were truly the end. And like, Jeff, you were there as well. Like, other teams would come into Rogers Arena and their people would seek out Canucks people to have a powwow to talk to, some of the folks who were making this organization run at the extremely high level that it was. We're a long way from that. But it did happen under this ownership group. It could be recaptured in time here if they get their priorities straight. But one of the things that they've got to come to grips with is, yes, you have an angry public because of the way that you have run the franchise for the last 12 to 13 years. You have to account for that. You have to own missteps. You have got to show responsibility and accountability. And you're right, this statement does miss on those fronts. That's our top story today. It is brought to you by Yellow Dog Neighborhood Brewing Foolish Winery. The Yellow Dog Play Dead IPA, the 473 ml 4-packs are on special for the month of March. Look for it on sale at private and government liquor stores. Well, we mentioned yesterday the Canucks were mathematically eliminated from the Stanley Cup playoffs on Sunday after a Nashville Predators victory. Rob Williams has gone a step forward here with the Daily Hive. He says, forget about being mathematically eliminated. When will they clinch 32nd place, Jeff? That is the big question. And as Rob reports, doing the math, it could happen as soon as this weekend. Now, it would take a lot of, It requires 3 straight regulation losses from the Vancouver Canucks, combined with 3 wins from each of the 4 teams that are directly ahead of them in the standings. So that is...
There's going to be a result that doesn't quite line up there.
You would have to think.
Essentially, the tragic number is 6, though. 6 regulation losses for the Vancouver Canucks or wins by those teams ahead of them. The math will no longer add up to the Canucks being able to finish ahead of those teams. So it's coming close. But again, I think maybe by this time next week is a more realistic.
Yeah, currently 15 points behind the Blackhawks, Rangers, and Flames with a game in hand on all 3 of those franchises. So unlikely this weekend. Here is the other thing that Rob writes, and we had some fun with this yesterday. Jeff, dare to dream here. Even if the Canucks set a new franchise record of 13 consecutive victories, theoretically possible, the Flames, Rangers, and Blackhawks would still finish ahead of Vancouver if they merely went 5-6-1 the rest of the way. St. Louis could go 4-7-1 the rest of the way and still finish ahead of the Canucks on a 13-game winning streak.
Big one in Calgary on Saturday night, Matt. It is the proverbial 4-pointer.
Calgary has gotten outstanding goaltending this year on the cheap.
Yeah.
And are still buried where they are. Blake talked on trade deadline day that the Flames rebuild had accelerated further than the Canucks rebuild. Is that fair?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
And they made deals like picking up Ryan Strome from Anaheim, taking on a bad salary, and getting paid to do so. Like, they made moves that the Canucks
and
just
multiple
have not...
future pieces for Kadri, multiple future pieces for Weegar. That is the big challenge, I think, for Rutherford and Alvin. If it's Rutherford and Alvin in the summer, that you have got to find takers for some of these players under contract, and you have to get good young assets for them. Going to be difficult. God, you need Jake DeBrusk to finish, I think, on one of his patented hot spells.
He's playing on the 4th line tonight, so I don't think that's going to happen.
And here's the other thing. This from Adam Kirsenblatt of the Hockey News, as you may know. the Buffalo Sabres, the Vancouver Canucks, expansion cousins, 1970. Neither have won a Stanley Cup. Kierszenblatt reports once the Sabres clinch a playoff berth, and that is just a matter of time here, they're leading their division, they will officially have more playoff appearances than the Vancouver Canucks in history. Both came into the season with 29 playoff appearances apiece. And, of course, Buffalo has not made it in 15 years and would still have more postseason appearances than the Canucks when they make it here, which should be, by this time next week, I would think.
Yep.
Canucks Ducks tonight, 7th game of this season-long 8-game homestand. The Canucks have a chance to go 3-0 versus Anaheim tonight, as JPat notes. They have beaten the Ducks, Predators, Hawks, and Capitals twice this season. And I was dumbfounded to see this, but I guess it's more a comment on Anaheim and how putrid they have been. They have won 7 straight games against the Ducks on home ice, Jeff. Canucks are 7-0 against the Ducks on home ice in the last 7 meetings.
Yeah, the Ducks have not been good, as you point out, for a while now, but they are leading the Pacific Division.
They are.
You
kind of a pillow fight.
Exactly,
Yeah.
but somebody's got to win the division, and I'm sure they're thinking, why not us? But wouldn't it be something if they fall just short of their prescribed goal? And part of the reason is because they couldn't get over this hurdle.
That is the Vancouver Canucks.
The Vancouver Canucks.
And I like this. Pray for John Shorthouse tonight. You have Elias Pettersson, Marcus Pettersson. You have Linus Karlsson, and then on the Anaheim side, Leo Carlsson and John Carlson.
A lot of Pettersons and a lot of Carlsons.
Jeff Paterson.
You have 6 of the 36 skaters tonight named either Pettersson or Carlson.
We can only hope they're all out there together at some point.
All right, so Kevin Lankinen makes his 4th start tonight instead of Tuolepilo, and I'm a little bit surprised. Now, Lankinen has been better of late, but of course, what was the one thing that Rick Tocchet talked about ad nauseum last year? I've got to find days and games to give Lankinen some rest. He starts to struggle when I lean on him and I play him too much. He's getting a 4th straight start. And there have been some off days between games. And
yeah, the homestand, there's not been travel, there's no back-to-backs, all of that.
Okay.
And they haven't played since Saturday, and it was an early game on Saturday.
Yeah.
But I just, Nikita Tolopilo's last start against Seattle, he wasn't very good. He let in that bad goal, the Bobby McMahon goal. That he kind of
terrible goal.
Yeah. And I get part of being a pro, and especially as a backup goaltender, is sitting and stewing on a poor performance for a little while. But 10 days and counting. Tolopilo shut the Ducks out the last time they were here, aside from the 2 minutes that he wasn't available. But he has both wins against Anaheim this year. To me, okay, so he wasn't very good against Seattle. You came back with Lankinen for a couple of games. Give Tolopilo a chance to atone for his ways. But this seems ridiculously penal that he's not, if he doesn't play tonight and he's not getting the start, then he's going to have to wait until Thursday, L.A. at the end of the homestand. But if Lankinen has a bbig night, maybe they choose to run Lankinen again. So I'm not sure. I wasn't at the rink this morning, but this one is baffling to me. It just feels like the St. Louis game on Saturday felt like the Tolopilo start. The Blues are one of the lowest scoring teams in the league. Afternoon start, whatever the case, it had been a week. That felt like the Tolopilo opportunity, and yet here we are now a game removed from that, and he's still not seeing the ice.
Jeff, if it was only this coach's system that seemingly no player has been able to get outside of Philip Roenick, if it was only the young players not developing this season, but the way he has handled the goaltending here of late, and I will take you back, sir, to March 4th against Carolina on home ice, where he goes for the quick hook at 4-2 in the middle period. And then Tolopilo lets in the first goal, and Adam Foote sewers him in the postgame. Young goaltender, you got to be ready for that spot. Well, as we discussed the day after, okay, fair enough. He's got to be ready at a moment's notice. But there was probably good reason why he wasn't ready. A, it's only 4-2, and Lankinen had been terrific in the first period that night. Number two, you've got a back-to-back coming up in Chicago and Winnipeg. He knows he's playing one of those games, so he's thinking, Lankinen's got a long leash tonight, as he should have. So the way he's handled the goaltending, on top of the other foibles, I am so done with this coaching staff. I know many of you think one more year, effective tank commanders. No. Your young players deserve a coaching staff that is going to allow them to develop better than they have this year in the National Hockey League. Your organization needs this long term. I think you're going to be bad enough to be in the running for number one next year, regardless of who's coaching. Scotty Bowman may not be able to coach this team out of the lottery next year. But you are spinning wheels, if not in reverse, with this coaching staff if you bring them back next season. Nils Höglander scratched in place of Curtis Douglas tonight. Foot said Pierre-Olivier Joseph might play. And we're wondering, is that Philip Hronek related? Is that Victor Mancini related, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Again, I wasn't at the rink this morning, but we talked yesterday, giving Hronek a maintenance day after a full team day off was curious, at the very least. And if anybody is playing through something, it would not surprise me if it's Philip Hronek with the amount that he has
just don't
logged.
ask him about it in the year-end post.
Fair enough.
Although I think he's a warmer, cuddlier guy now. He may take that question a little better than yours of 2 years ago.
Perhaps. But yeah, I think we're going to have to wait till warm-up probably to see who's going for the Vancouver Canucks on defense tonight.
Yeah, and Victor Mancini finally met the media after signing that 2-year extension Friday at $1 million per. First of all, he was quite happy. He knows where he's playing. He knows what he's getting paid. Here's the big fella.
You know, even before the deal, I just wanted to go out and put my best foot forward and play the game, right? But this definitely, you know, kind of puts an ease to your mind. The next, what do we got, like 12, 13 games or so. Just go out and play my best, keep my feet moving, and, you know, hopefully I can get my teeth fixed now too.
And I'll say this. If they felt that Victor Mancini was struggling psychologically, emotionally with his NHL career and where it was going after this season, then I heartily applaud doing the contract extension now. As he says, if it gives him peace of mind and you get to see him for 13, I guess it would have been 14 games, including St. Louis, go out there with mind at rest and just go play your game, son, then, hey, that's well done. That's good timing. Good on them. He was also asked about where he feels he has improved. Here's Mancini.
I think a lot of reads in the D zone. Like I said before, just getting reps, making sure my head's up. And, you know, I think overall just kind of calming my game down as well. You know, I don't want to, you know, force opportunities, just when the opportunities come to me to take advantage of them.
Your thoughts there, Jeff?
Yeah. Play within himself. Again, I still think it's important for him to figure out what he's going to be at the National Hockey League level. Don't worry about the things you've done in the AHL to get you here. You're here now. There are 13 games to go. I'm curious, though. P.O. Joseph is healthy, so there's another extra body. We haven't seen them bring anybody from Abbotsford in yet. Yeah. And time is running out here.
That's right.
And whether it's Kirill Kudryavtsev, whether Sawyer Minio has earned a look.
They did it late last season with Mueller and with Kudryavtsev, as you recall. So they might be waiting for the final week. But
it's
quite
possible.
You might as well go now.
But it's just something to keep in mind that there could be some, and it doesn't mean that Mancini would necessarily come out of the lineup, but they may bring in other bodies that they want to have a look at, and somebody would have to see.
And just so you know, there is no roster limit now. You just have to be cap compliant.
Yeah. You do have 4 recalls. That's the one thing, but they haven't used any of them yet. So.
And you're running out of time.
Yeah.
And, you know, the other thing we should note, Jeff, I should have noted this as we were talking about season ticket prices going up and finances and all that. And look, if you're in Canucks Sports and Entertainment, cap has taken another significant jump up next year. How many million is it going up next year? It's quite a few. So your costs are going up. You're also, as a season ticket holder, getting an extra game because we're going 84 games, so that should be noted as well. So you're 42 home games, not 40 one. But, Jeff, if I'm not mistaken, after last year went sideways on them, they left something in the order of $13 million in salary cap space on the table. And as it stands right now, Jeff, they're going to leave another $14 million in salary cap space on the table. Now, the best thing you can say about the Aquilini's ownership of this team is they have spent on the hockey product without fail, of course, with the exception of that one free agency period during the pandemic when they turned the taps off. But going all the way back to when they took over majority control, whether it was Nonis, Gillis, Lyndon Benning, Rutherford Alvin, they have spent on the hockey product. They have buried NHL salaries in the minors, and good on them. This is a flush market. The revenues of Canucks Sports Entertainment are strong, comparatively speaking, to their competitors. They have recognized this as a competitive advantage that can be gleaned outside of the salary cap. So, bravo. Leaving $13 and $14 million on the salary cap in consecutive years. And look, there's a hockey ops case for it because you're in a rebuild or you're not a playoff team, so you don't really have to spend to the cap. But should also be noted, those are monies that would have, I suspect, been budgeted for because, I mean, Alvin is tolling cap space day to day last year.
Sure. Yep.
So they were thinking they were spending right to the limit in the last 2 years, and they haven't. So they will reap savings there. That should also be noted.
Yeah, but I go back to the idea that for all the talk, this organization, through a couple of management groups, has never weaponized cap space. Now, in years gone by, they haven't had cap space. But these last couple of seasons...
Or a need to, but yes.
And also, has that ship sailed because the cap goes up? I think a lot of teams aren't going to be spending to the cap.
Right. And, of course, brokerage is more difficult because you can't just take on a player and move him immediately. You've got to wait a period of months.
But I still think with cap space there is an opportunity to take on a bad salary for a year or two.
That's it.
If you get paid to do it.
This summer, and that brings us to our next talking point. Mike Russo was on the Kipper and Bourne show yesterday out of Minnesota, covered the GM's meetings, and said he thinks that a lot of table setting has happened for potential moves this summer. And if you're a Canucks fan, you can only hope that they're part of the table setting. I mean, it certainly didn't sound like that in the press conference post-trade deadline, but it is conceivable that some table setting has taken place here with Elias Pettersson or some of the bigger salaries that are more difficult to move in season. It is conceivable that you've got some teams that have bad contracts that are looking for outs with those guys in the summer, and Vancouver proves a useful dumping ground as a rebuilds team with cap space aplenty. So we'll see where it goes. But yes, you're quite right, Jeff. The ability to weaponize cap space is something this organization has not done and is running out of opportunities. On prospects, I want to get to some prospects. Said it last week. We're going to talk prospects just about every show between now and next season, or at least now in the summer. Some accolades have come in for some Canucks forwards in the Ontario Hockey League. The OHL released its annual coaches poll. Dave Hall has the news here from Canucks Army. And 2 players and 3 accolades. Hardest worker, Gabe Sherrod, got 9 votes. This is a 2025 6th-round pick. He's a winger with Kitchener. Kitchener finished top of the standings. Kitchener could very well be in Kelowna, Jeff, as the OHL's representative in the Mem Cup. Sherrod had a pretty good season, so we'll see where he goes from here. And then Riley Patterson, we've talked about this young man aplenty here over the last couple of years because he's already outperformed his draft position. He was a 4th-rounder in 2024. He got votes for best playmaker and best shootout shooter from the OHL coaches. Had 40 goals, 84 points in 60 games this season. He is skating with Niagara, and that's another team that could make a run in the Ontario Hockey League. So we're going to be watching for those 2 guys. We're also going to be watching Anthony Romani at the NCAA tournament, which gets going this weekend. More on him with Chris Peters. And on draft prospects for June, we had Craig Button on the show last week, and he told us March 24th, the new Craigslist is dropping with a new top 10 that he previewed for us last week. How about this? Carson Carls, the big defenseman out of Prince George, is number 2 on Craig's list, ahead of Ivar Stenberg and Chase Reed. And there's Liam Ruck, one of the Ruck twins from Masoyus, who cracks the top 10.
Oh, Keaton
for
Veroff
Craig.
is in 5th, and a Ruck is in the top 10. Craig mixing it up a
Anyways,
little.
we'll be talking draft going forward, including on today's program with Chris Peters. We mentioned the Ruck twins yesterday leading the CHL in scoring as draft eligibles. Just wanted to put a couple of other names on your radar here. Here's a look at the rest of the top 20 scorers among draft eligible players beyond the Ruck twins. And there's a couple of names in there that could well be fits for the Canucks' second first-round pick, the Minnesota selection, towards the end of the first round. JP Hurlburt is a forward with Kamloops, an American forward who came up and just had a sensational season. 97 points. Nikita Klepov is a winger with Saginaw who also flirted with 100. And then going back to Craig last week, he said he quite liked Igor Shilov, who's a centerman with the Victoriaville franchise in the Q, who was also a top 5 scorer. We're going to tell you more and more about these prospects, get into more and more of these names as the spring continues here. Big happening down in Seattle yesterday that it may not have looked like on the surface, but the Kraken and their owner, Samantha Holloway, and if you're not familiar, Samantha was the heir to the Kraken after her father, the founding owner of the Kraken, Mr. Bonnerman, passed away not long ago. The Kraken are taking a bigger stake in Climate Pledge Arena, forming an umbrella company which could very well include an NBA franchise. As we know, the reporting is out there. There is going to be multiple bids for an NBA franchise out of the city of Seattle and out of the city of Las Vegas. So the Kraken taking a very important step here because either you're the winning bid, Jeff, and you hold an NBA and an NHL team all under one umbrella company. We know many examples of that, including Colorado Avalanche and others. Or the NBA team becomes your tenant. Blake pointed out on Twitter last night, this is the best way for the Kraken to survive when the NBA is in town. Do you have any worries about the Kraken when the NBA gets there?
It's a crowded market, without a doubt, and especially with the Mariners all of a sudden relevant. Now, how long that stays, we'll see. But, Seahawks are the top dogs, obviously. They've got the hardware to show it. But a resurgence from the Mariners, Husky football and Husky sports, obviously. They've got the rain as well.
Sounders, yes.
Sounders
on a ghost. I mean, they got all the
Dodgers,
sports
junior
franchises.
hockey. It's a crowded landscape to say the very least. So we know that the pro sports model generally doesn't work when you're a tenant. It probably makes sense if they can be the winning bidder. And so, yes, if that's then you've got 2 key anchor tenants in your own building.
And you control all the revenues that the building, and if you're, oftentimes the teams themselves aren't all that profitable, it's the buildings that are profitable.
Does the WNBA team play in Climate Pledge?
Good question. I do not know.
Because they're not listed as any part of the holding, so I don't know the structure there, but all of a sudden that gets to be a busy building.
Yeah. And for years, the NBA had priority in shared buildings.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's still the case because, even the Bruins didn't have priority in the building they owned. The Celtics took priority. They agreed to that by having the Celtics as a tenant because that was a best practice that the NBA wasn't willing to part with. Anyways, we shall see, but happenings down in the Seattle sports scene. And we mentioned this late last week going into the Giants regular season finale and Bill Wilms night at the LEC. The first round matchups in the Western Hockey League, they're set now. We knew there'd be an all BC series. We now know it will be Kamloops and Kelowna. The Rockets featuring Canucks prospect defenseman Parker Alcos from Port Moody, taken in the 6th round in 2024. Prince George will host Spokane in the 3-6 matchup.
Yeah,
the Cougars.
No travel there.
That is. Hey, Prince George anywhere.
I
man.
know, but.
And I actually make the drive once a year, Jeff.
Yeah, from here, but not from Spokane.
From Spokane, fair enough. And then Penticton, the V, so successful in their expansion season, the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. They will host the Seattle Thunderbirds in the 2-7 matchup. So,
what about Everett Tri-City? Tri-City going in with a little momentum?
Jeff and I came across, what was the record? 1-18?
Yeah. So
Tri-City.
like 1 win in their last 22 games.
Tri-City started the year quite well.
Yeah.
Like 26-18 and something. They finished with 1 win in their last 21 or 22 games. Staggering.
Still made the playoffs.
1. Anyways.
Saving them for the postseason.
Of course, a lot of eyes will be on that Blazers-Rockets matchup. And, boy, if you're Kelowna hosting the Memorial Cup, don't lose this one, right? Don't lose this one. You go an awful long time before you next touch.
Divided loyalties in the Aginla household.
Absolutely.
Tej playing and Jerome looking on.
Let's get to our menu. It's brought to you by Greta, a fantastic spot to pregame or postgame. You are mere steps from the arena or the stadium. And if you're looking for a venue for a private party, Greta is your spot. It's got a private riser in the back surrounded by screens. You can watch whatever you want. You'll be surrounded by an arcade as well. Game for everybody. Approachable menu of delicious street food. Try the tacos. They're sublime. And for more information or to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We'll talk to John Shannon here. On the ownership file, is it time for Francesco Aquilini to come on out and to speak to his public and take questions? Also talk to John about the NHL playoff format, the play-in, and why the commissioner is so resistant to a model that other leagues have adopted here. And then Chris Peters from Flow Hockey, an NHL draft and prospect writer. He also does a podcast with Cam Robinson. He's coming on in to bone us up, educate us on all the different NCAA teams and players you should be looking for at the NCAA Ice Hockey Tournament later this week. That includes Canucks prospect Anthony Romani. That includes some of the college free agents that are still out there. And we'll talk some draft with Chris as well, the McKennas, the Stenbergs, the Verhoffs, and the others at the top of the draft where the Canucks will pick, either first, second, or third. Later in the program, David Osted trying to help his old club, Vancouver Whitecaps FC. There's some NFL signings to get into as well. And baseball season is upon us, JPat. And 2 teams of interest in this market, and they both look poised to do great things this year. Looking forward to ball season. And, of course, looking forward to the Vancouver Canadians as well. They get going here in a couple of weeks. Get your tickets. 604-872-5232, CanadiansBaseball.com. All right. Our Bet365 bets of the day. Tim Stutzla did not score for you last night, Jeff.
Nope.
So you got another crack at it here tonight. I took a future.
All right. Cutter Gauthier. Some might be surprised at this. Cutter Gauthier is tied with Connor McDavid for second in the National Hockey League in shots on goal this season. Only Nate Dogg in Colorado has more. Gauthier shoots and scores a bunch, 36 goals on 257 shots. So he likes to put pucks on the net. We know the Canucks do not defend particularly well. I'm looking at you, Cutter Gauthier, to get 5 shots on goal in this hockey game. Doesn't have to score. Just keep firing pucks until you hit 5. Pays out at plus 220.
I was going to say, I need some value if I'm 5. That's a very high bar. Kevin Lankinen for a 4th straight game, and we know he struggles when he's overused. Hronek playing through something, we think. Canucks have been a disaster defensively all season, and this Ducks team can really score, has more at stake. Add it all up, and I'm going Anaheim over 4.5 goals tonight, paying at plus 170. Paying at plus 175.
So if Cutter Gauthier scores all 5, then
we're in a great shape.
Yeah.
We're in absolutely great shape. Hockey moves fast, and now with 3-goal early payout, there's one less thing you have to wait around for. Bet365. Download the app, see what early payout's all about. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. John Shannon coming up next. Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center in this next segment, brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers and the Toyota Prius plug-in hybrid. It's a no-compromise approach to electric vehicles, offering the best of both worlds. You drive up to 72 kilometers on the battery alone. It's enough to get you downtown to the rink, the grocery store. Of course, you plug it in at home overnight. No charger needed here, just a regular plug-in. And if you need gas, seamless transition, get you an extra 962 kilometers. That's the combined range. No sacrifice when it comes to horsepower. This is a sleek, handsome vehicle loaded with tech that's easy to use. And it's red tag days right now at Toyota. So get yourself to shoptoyota.ca or your local Pacific Toyota dealer during red tag days running from March to May. Here's John Shannon, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, his podcast 100% Hockey, and the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada. Hello, how are you?
Gents, I'm doing great.
Have you met my colleague, Mr. Paterson? He's in for Blake this week.
Well, you know what, guys? The Thompson Okanagan get along all the time, so it's always good.
Jeff was telling war stories about Colin Kamloops Blazers games back in the day.
Tacoma Dome.
In the Tacoma Dome of all places, John.
I get Bruce Hamilton to tell me his version of those stories all the time. So
yeah. Well, I asked him, I was like, was Kelowna in the, like, here's how long ago it was. I said, Jeff, was Kelowna in the league when you were calling games? And he goes, yes, they just moved from Tacoma. He called games in the old rink, not in the...
the downtown rink in Kelowna. I've never called the game in it's hosting the Memorial Cup this spring, but it was under construction, but I've been in it, but I never got a chance to call a game there.
Yeah, and we've got the rivalry, Blazers and Rockets in round one of the WHL. So looking forward to that. John, we so rarely hear from Francesco Aquilini. We are wondering on today's poll question, after a season like this, where you're trying to renew your season tickets, in some cases price increases, and charting a new path forward, is it time we hear from the chairman? Do you think it would be appropriate if he were to hold an end-of-season press conference this year?
I have my first response would be, why now? Really, in essence, that's what Jim has been hired to do, was to speak for the hockey club. At the same time, I think that if the ownership feels a need to connect with the fan base, then the answer is I'm not sure what it would hurt, to be honest. It's important, I think, when you look around the league, that at a certain point you have to say, we feel your pain too. The question becomes, Matt, back at you guys, is would it cause more angst than it would help in the end? The last person, for instance, that did an owner that did a press conference was Terry Pagula in Buffalo for the Buffalo Bills when they changed coaches. Mm-hmm. It was an unmitigated disaster. Owners own, and owners stay behind closed doors because sometimes they really say silly things in public. And if it might be a classic case, and I'm not suggesting this for Francesco, but it might be a case of, keeping yourself away from the trouble to do it. And that's, and from a technocrat perspective, Jim Rutherford's hired to be that voice. He really is. He's hired to be that voice, and no one can complain that Jimmy hasn't been upfront and available when needed to be.
Yeah, well, I think there would be some in the market who'd say, I wish he did Vancouver media as much as he did Toronto media. But Jeff, go ahead.
Well, no, John, you said why now? And I guess that would be my question to Francesco is, now that they have absolutely run the flag up the pole and have committed to this rebuild, that's the answer I'd like to know. People have been banging the drum for a rebuild out here for the better part of a decade. So why now? Like, what's changed in Francesco's mind that he's finally on board with this direction?
Perhaps he listened to you, Jeff.
I doubt it.
Perhaps he had no other choice, Shannon. Perhaps the jig was up. After a decade of trying to fast track and shortcut it, there was no other alternative.
Yeah, I was being facetious, obviously, but the owner can't. He can't be wrong going public and being transparent. The fear is does the owner say something that haunts him all summer, haunts him for 2 or 3 years? That becomes, because these guys are successful in business. That does not necessarily mean they're successful in public relations, quite frankly. And some guys aren't comfortable speaking in public. Some guys aren't. And I look around the league, and when you ask me the question, I started to go around the league in my head. What owner do we hear from? The answer is not too many. We don't. Right now, I'll tell you what's fascinating, and I'm not changing the topic. The owner we hear more from than anybody else right now is Edward Rogers, who is trying to change his image in Toronto, and for so many reasons. But if Francesco came out and did a short press conference to say, we feel your pain, we're trying to do this, yes, but I guarantee you in the end, people would walk away, and this is my personal opinion, people would walk away saying, why did he say that? Why did he say what he said?
Yep, probably.
And he can't win that battle. He will never have the last word. You guys will have the last word. Patrick Johnson will have the last word.
Fans get the last word now, John. On social media,
exactly.
Fans get the last word. Yeah. So
you don't have to tell us about it. We all get that last word.
Yeah, indeed we do. But hey, it's a form of accountability. And that would play into this, right? Responsibility, accountability. In terms of his comfort level speaking publicly, he's not. He has gotten better since Jeff and I are old enough and we're around this market long enough to remember the press conference when he fired Dave Nonis, Jeff, and he was taking cues from like the corporate PR firm that worked with the Aquilini Group, and it just didn't come off well. That demurred him. He did not speak for years after that. A litany of team presidents and hockey presidents like Gillis and Linden wound up speaking. But in terms of the go forward, look, his Q rating can't get any lower here because everybody recognizes that he has set the direction of this franchise. No rebuilds. That's been the case through 3 management groups now, countless coaches, and the jig is up. I think if he comes out with a strong statement, taking responsibility, accountability, falling on the sword, if you will, I think there's a real opportunity here for people to feel a little warmer and a little fuzzier towards at least his business, if not him personally, going forward.
Okay, so I don't disagree with you, but does that have to go in the form of a press conference? Jim Dolan has written a press release, a letter to the fan base, a couple of times in the last 6 years, and it worked once. And it's still, far too early to decide if it's worked a second time. And I suspect that it won't with the general manager that exists there right now. But is that enough? Does he? And because, again, that might be a level of comfort for Francesco to be able to say, mea culpa, this is on me. Please stick with us. Yep. But not opening up to Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, from our point of view, that wouldn't be ideal, but I do think that would get most of the job done. They did put out a season ticket renewal notice yesterday where they didn't necessarily take any sort of responsibility. Nothing was said with regards to, hey, we're sorry about this season and the way things are gone. It was more pointing forward. And I understand that when you're trying to get people to renew their season tickets. But yeah, no, a statement, a letter. Jeff, what do you think? Would that fit the bill?
I'm prepared for that. I mean, that has been the direction of ownership the last bunch of years. And then, of course, as John said, I mean, we'll parse every sentence, every punctuation mark. Again, like we used to hear from him, even on social, to some degree, there was some interaction with the fan base. And as things have gone sideways here for the last couple of years, see him around the rink on occasion, but just don't hear from anybody in the Aquilini family. So this has been a year that has stood alone for all the wrong reasons. It does sort of feel like there should be some explanation. And you're right. Maybe it'll just be Jim at the end of the season doing his annual thing. But boy, there are a lot of questions about what has gone on and what's gone wrong with this hockey club this year.
I could give you a dozen owners that would do this. Will be in the same boat. That will not speak publicly and will either issue a letter to the fan base or let their hockey people manage it. Really, I mean, you don't hear from Daryl Cates, you don't hear from Murray Edwards, you don't hear from David Thompson, you rarely hear now from Michael Andlauer, you don't hear very often from Jeff Molson. You can go.
Oh, you hear from Molson. Molson is out there. Molson does interviews, John. He's a little more engaged.
I haven't seen one in the last couple of years because I think he's taken a step back because of, again, he's trusting his hockey guys.
Yeah, fair. But I mean, he also appeared regularly in that rebuild series.
You hear from Tom Ghilardi. You hear from Tom Dundon.
The one that they produced.
That's right. That's right.
Yes,
which is a little bit different. Is this on ownership?
No.
Okay. Before we transition, let me just ask you this, Mr. Shannon, and I will reveal this story now because the person in question is deceased. So I spent 6 months of my life covering the bankruptcy and then sale of the Ottawa Senators, and cultivated a very good relationship with Eugene Melnick after he emerged as the buyer in bankruptcy court. And on the day where everything closed and he became officially the owner of the team with the Board of Governor vote, I called him and he said to me, Matt, I'm not supposed to talk to you as much anymore. And I'm really not supposed to talk to you off the record because Gary tells me there's no such thing as off the record when speaking to the media. That he had basically got his NHL owners workshop as told by Gary Bettman. Does Gary sweat owners speaking publicly? Like in Gary's world, would he just as soon they all shut up and have their presidents and GMs do all the talking?
I don't know about that, but I mean, Matt, I have had the same conversation with another owner after he took control of a club as well. Exact same conversation that you had. I can't tell the name because he's still alive. But
it stands to reason Gary gives them this pep talk, right? Once they're in the club, don't talk to media and definitely don't go off the record with media because he views that as troublesome, either to the NHL at large or the market itself.
And I think that, the challenge becomes if you're speaking for your own team, that's one thing. But if the moment you cross that line and deal with a league issue, that ain't your problem. And so that's where I believe that Gary would say, you know what, just watch your P's and Q's. And even to this day, there are still owners that talk liberally, but they really guarantee that they only talk about their own club and they don't cross line into league issues.
Speaking of the commish, and our first chance to visit with you since the GM's meetings last week, and Gary coming out again and pushing back so hard on this idea of a change to the playoff format, but also backing his Department of Player Safety, and that was in the wake of the Radko Gudas thing, and Gudas, by the way, is eligible to play here tonight in Vancouver. And the Leafs are in Anaheim next week, so I'm sure League will take note of that one.
With nothing to lose, playoff-wise,
but then there was the A.J. Greer hit on Connor Zary that gets a 3-game suspension. Like, why can't Gary just take a step back here and take a beat and think that maybe there is a better way to do some of the league business?
You think that would happen during a season? Seriously, would that happen now as opposed to July?
I think the messaging could that he's willing to.
I don't think the messaging can change until the end of the season, Jeff. If and I don't believe the messaging will change. I think there's a real belief that what they've structured now with player safety is, in their opinion, working. Again, I don't work for the league, so I can speak for the league. I won't get the memo about being off the record or on the record from the commissioner. I may get a phone call, but that's okay. I'm one of those guys that it's a thankless job. Nobody's going to be happy. I do think that the people that work in that department try to be as thorough and as fair as possible to both sides. Is the system broken? That's a different story. And the reason people might think that the system's broken is it's in the collective bargaining agreement. Fines are as laughable as ever right now because they're in the CBA. Game suspensions are low between phone reviews and in-person reviews because it's in the CBA. If everybody was serious about changing it, and that includes the Players Association, because the Players Association have to be on board, then rewrite that clause in the collective bargaining agreement. Rewrite it. Knees are a 20-game suspension. Hit from behind is a 10-game suspension. That's not going to happen, Jeff. It is not going to happen. The maximum fine is $5,000. They put more on the board. They'll put more on the board for the Maple Leafs in Anaheim than $5,000. They will. If the system is broken, everybody has to buy in and fix it. This is not just a league thing. This is the Players Association. This is the players as well. It's would I favor a third party arbitrator all the time? I think it's probably worth considering. But that man becomes maybe the most powerful person in the game overnight. And I'm not sure the players, nor the owners, nor the commissioner would want to relinquish that power.
Any chance Craig Berube suits up for the Leafs on Monday night against the Ducks?
Yes.
I don't know.
John, why is he so defiant on playoff format?
And you're suggesting 1 versus 8? Is that what you're saying?
I actually find myself in the same camp with the commissioner on this. I like the divisional playoff format. I know I'm in the minority. Jeff, Blake, Frank, everybody we have on tells me I'm wrong on this, but I actually
I wouldn't mind 1-8. I wouldn't mind 1-8. I do not believe in a play-in system, though. I don't believe in a play-in tournament. We're in a look at the games tonight.
This is a play-in. That's exactly what I say every single year. This Ottawa-Detroit game is a 23-point probability swing, if I'm not mistaken, one way or the other for the postseason.
Crazy. And we have joked the last 2 weeks and congratulated the schedule maker on making this schedule so good. But there is some logic to the way the schedule is made at this time of year, being in your division, being in your conference. All your travel is the big travel for the most part is out of the way for most teams. Not all teams, but most teams. This is our play-in tournament. And remember, we don't want to play in tournament. We're going to 84 games next year. We're getting rid of two or three preseason games. We're adding 2 regular season games. We don't need more games. And there is something to be said magical about what we're doing right now. The other aspect of it is looking at East versus West. And if the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are in total chaos, would actually be close to getting a playoff spot in the West. Well, I remind everybody of my vintage that, the Norris division, the Leafs would get in with 63 points.
Yes.
This is cyclical. Last year, Calgary, Craig Conroy was on our show yesterday. Craig reminded us they had 96 points last year.
Yep.
And didn't get in the playoffs.
And it might win the Pacific Division.
This year they'd be in. They might win the division.
That's right.
So you can't take a single season and be knee jerk to it. And I think that one of the best things for competitive balance perception that every team's in a playoff race, and I do say perception because I admit it's a perception, is this system that we have right now. And for the most part, for most fans, it has worked brilliantly. It really has.
And I'm 100% with you, John. At this time of year, I find myself watching far more out-of-market hockey than I normally do. I was telling Jeff I'm particularly interested in watching Ottawa and Columbus and San Jose these days. If those games are on my cable dial, I am stopping and I'm watching, and particularly when they're up against other playoff hopefuls and the stakes are as high as they are in that Senators-Red Wings game tonight. Here's what I don't understand about it. It makes good business sense. We have seen the NBA adopt a play-in. We have seen Major League Baseball and the NFL expand their playoff fields, keeping more fan bases interested and, of course, driving more revenue. And that would seem to fit with what Gary's about. And yet he is steadfast against the play. And I forget if it was Elliot or Darren or one of the insiders tweeted on the weekend, like, a lot of powerful owners have leaned on the commissioner regarding a play-in, and yet still he holds firm that it's not necessary. That part surprises me.
Well, again, it will have to be collectively bargained. And so in order to do that, what would the owners and the league have to give up to the players? Because, tit for tat, you have to give something up. The other thing is I think there's a ton of pressure. We're going to start the season in September next year, and we're going to still end middle of June. The season is too long now. It is too long now. There are too many games, and nobody's volunteering to go to 76 games in the regular season and take a pay cut for the players. So any chance of extending the season some way, somehow, I just think is a terrible mistake. I love this game. I have worked in this game a long, long time. And there are times where I'm tired of watching and being involved. I get tired. And some of the times I get tired at times when I should be most engaged.
There you go.
And I think fans are the same way.
I'm 100% with you, John. We get to game 1 or game 2 of the conference finals to the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Stanley Cup final is absolutely gorgeous outside. And I'm saying to myself, really, especially at 4 p.m. here in British Columbia or 5 p.m. here in British Columbia right now, when she wants to go out and there's so much buzz and activity out my window.
So I was in Pittsburgh on the weekend. I went to the Winnipeg Jets game on Saturday, and came home and turned the radio on, and there's Pittsburgh playing at home again on Sunday afternoon, and they're playing at home again tonight. 3 games in 3.5 days.
Yeah. And
you're going, man, we're squeezing the lemon pretty tight right now.
Yes,
we are.
Yes, we are.
And it's not now. The challenge for the commissioner is don't just grow revenue the normal way, just by adding inventory. Change things up. The World Cup is one of those things. Going to Europe is another one of those things. Find 6 different ways to grow the revenue of this league. And by the way, they are trying. The games that are going to be played in the afternoon to be seen in primetime in Europe, to grow the TV markets in Europe. Those are smart things to do without really affecting the day-to-day NHL season of, by the way, 1,312 regular season games.
Yep. No, I hear you.
1,312. Soon to be, quick, do the math, 1,353.
Yep. And John, there was perhaps a lesson in the PGA Tour a couple of weeks ago, and their new CEO talking about scarcity going forward on his tour, that sometimes less is more. And I do wonder whether the NHL and other leagues have to take that lesson. We're out of time, my friend, but thank you for yours. Great conversation today, John. Appreciate that. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, John.
Cheers.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center. And this next segment is brought to you by Pizza. And Jeff, have you heard of their delivery guarantee?
I have.
If your order is not delivered on time, you order. They'll give you a time. If it's not delivered on time, it's free. That's right. When you place your order, that estimated time of delivery suddenly becomes your world. You were looking at that clock saying, are they going to beat it? And if they don't, fear not, your food arrives. Your order is free. Plus, at Pizza Pizza, the new Volcano Dipper. Pull, rip, and dip slices into a molten volcano-shaped center filled with the famous creamy garlic sauce. The perfect app for creamy garlic lovers. Check it out at Pizza Pizza. Well, we want to keep the prospect talk going, and no one better to join us and discuss than the content manager at Flow Hockey. He's an NHL draft and prospect analyst. He is one half of the Called Up, the Prospect podcast with our buddy Cam Robinson. It is our pleasure to welcome Chris Peters to the program. Hi, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me. Good to be with you.
Well, no, really appreciate you making time to join. You and Cam do fantastic work on your podcast. And of course, I follow all your written work as well. We wanted to, well, needless to say, there's a lot of Vancouver Canucks eyes on prospects this year, Chris.
You don't say.
It's been that kind of year. So
Let us tell you.
yeah,
It's a long story.
It's March and we're talking NHL draft. I mean, I think that says it all. Before we get to some of the particulars, I would just like your take. The Canucks have 4 picks in the top 50 as it stands today. What's your overall take on the depth and quality of this draft class?
Yeah, it's an interesting year. I feel like it's been a weird year the whole way. I think it always is when, we had a situation where we felt so clearly about the top of the draft, and then all of a sudden it kind of changed and has evolved as the season has worn on. And, I think that the opportunities that exist for teams at the very top of the draft remain robust in terms of the kinds of players that you have. And I think it's a great year to be looking for, potential top 4 defensemen and other things like that. It's always a little bit different when, we're talking about the top 2 forwards being, wings that are a little bit on the slighter side in terms of, the way that it kind of looks at this point with obviously McKenna, Stenberg. But then you have all these other defensemen too, these big defensemen. So I think if you miss out on the first overall pick in the lottery, there's still plenty to get. And there's still plenty that you can get. As you move further down the draft board, I do think that it thins out faster than in other years. I think there's a lot of players that are, have a lot of questions, and it's not a strong year for centers. It's not a strong year for goaltenders. So, you're kind of trying to figure out where some of that value is going to lie as you get further down the first round. I think if once you get outside of the top 12 or so players, as is the case pretty much any year, you're starting to talk about more significant drops in terms of the draft, the way you would tier the prospects. And so I think within the top 50, there's always, it's incumbent upon the scouts to really put that work in and to really stress the importance of finding those players wherever they may be. And certainly, I think the Canucks are going to be a team that's pounding the pavement more than most with that number of picks, because there's opportunity there to find value. I have, some skepticism in terms of the overall depth of this draft class. I think that it's not necessarily the strongest year. We don't have what I feel is a franchise-altering player at the top of this draft. And then as we've seen, Celebrinis and Bedards and others of that nature, and Schaefer last year, although I would tell you, last year we were feeling, could Matthew Schaefer really be a franchise-changing player? Is he going to be, we certainly had hope, that there was a guy that he was going to be the real deal. And this year it's been, confirmed. So,
say the least.
So I think that's the other thing is players are going to develop and things are going to change. But, if I'm looking at it today, I'm feeling a little skeptical about the depth. But again, I still think that the teams that put their homework in are going to be able to find the right fit for them to mine that value.
Are you a McKenna guy or are you a Stenberg guy at number 1?
It's bounced back and forth. I mean, I think that the highest upside potential among the players is McKenna, the flashiness, the high skill. But the concerns are very real. And I think for me, Ivar Stenberg is the better competitor. He's the more complete player. But at the same time, the top end of Gavin McKenna's skill and the top end of his game supersedes Stenberg's. And so that's what I lean towards a little bit. The one thing I'll say is, obviously college hockey is hard. Gavin McKenna producing at the level that he did is incredibly impressive. He did have a couple of seismic games in there. The weird part is that, on the team that he plays on and on the way things have gone, they have really struggled defensively as a group. And he has done really little to change that for the better. And not that, you would expect a high scoring wing to do that. But, just in terms of overall impact, yes, he scores a lot of points, but he's still often on the negative side of the ledger when it comes to, being on for goals against and other things like that. So I think that there's still work to be done, but the high end of McKenna is higher. And, if you asked me this question right after the World Juniors, as we did on our own podcast, I was definitely leaning towards Stenberg as number one. I have and still have concerns about McKenna. I don't feel great about really anybody in terms of this is for sure the number one guy. I think you can make a case for as many as 7 players that you could say, I could talk myself into that player, which is not a great place to be if you have the number one pick. You want it to be a no doubter. It isn't that way every year. And so, you have to make sure whoever you're calling, you're feeling very strongly about. And I think at this point for me, the only player that would get me excited is McKenna.
Chris, it's NCAA tournament time, and obviously a lot of eyes on Gavin McKenna and his Penn State team. I'm sure we'll get around to talking about Keaton Verhoff as well. Yeah. With those types of names, though, this year, is there a little more sizzle to the tournament this year with a lot of the major junior guys heading to college?
I think there's just more sizzle on college hockey in general at this point because of the star power that we've seen throughout the year, and certainly adding these new recruits, and we'll see them again next year. But I think having McKenna and Verhoff in particular, 2 of the top NHL draft prospects, really raises the level. But then you keep going down the list and you see the Porter Martones and Caden Lindstroms and players that have been high draft picks in the NHL, and them being more of a factor here. So, the star power is very bright, and it has been in college for the last several years, but it now there's more, and there's more depth to it. And obviously the draft element changes the dynamic of it. So I think that, I think a lot of people are often surprised by how popular college hockey is in the United States. And it's not like it's a main sport, we're a niche within the niche sport. But when you add the college element to that, it changes the dynamic. We have a lot of big schools with huge alumni bases that are very invested in it. So this is going to be a really big time of year. And now the more casual fans, the fans that haven't seen college hockey as much, that are now more aware of it because of the draft and other things, will certainly be paying closer attention. And I think they're going to really like what they see.
Are you riding the Michigan wave, or do you have your eye on somebody else?
I think it's, teams that are built the way that Michigan is built, certainly with some of the youth that they have, and kind of the way their decor looks. I think those teams have a really hard time winning the national championship. I think that the defense in college hockey, the teams that are harder and heavier to play against and older typically are the teams that win. Michigan is, I think, far exceeded my expectations this year. So make no mistake, I think they're an outstanding team. They've got some real talent. TJ Hughes, Michael Hage up front, 2 of the very best players in the country. They've got a great goaltender in Jack Ivankovic. So they have some of the elements that you're going to need to be competitive. I think they really have a great shot to make it to the Frozen Four. But then you look at teams like they're going to have to go through potentially, Minnesota Duluth or something like that. That's a heavier team that's going to, they're going to play you a little bit differently. They're going to play you a little bit harder. And so managing that, you look at teams like Western Michigan that have more senior talent. You look at teams like Quinnipiac and others where they're going to be tough to play against. And you look at, quite frankly, North Dakota, which has, a really talented blue line, which I think is part of the strength of their team. Good goaltending. They're a little bit more complete to me. But to me, I think that the favorite for the whole thing is one I haven't mentioned yet, and that's Michigan State. I think that they do have the depth, the experience, and most importantly, the goaltending to do it. Now, they didn't win the Big Ten tournament, so that's a little bit of a concern, right? They got upset early last year in the tournament, a little bit of a concern. I still think that this is a team that is probably, of all of them, the most complete team in the country.
Well, it's funny you mentioned them, Chris, because I wanted to ask you about a Canucks prospect on that team, a winger named Anthony Romani. And sort of we tracked him after the Canucks drafted him in the 6th round a couple of years ago and went, hey, OHL point totals are pretty darn good. And then we saw him make the jump to Michigan State this year and thought, okay, well, that'll be a big test going in there at 20 years old. 27 points in 35 games. He's scoring there too. What do you think? Do the Canucks have an NHLer here, a future NHLer, or at least a potential NHLer in Romani at Michigan State?
No, I mean, he's definitely a guy you got to get under contract. I think that this is one of those players where I think this path that opened up was particularly beneficial to them, where he had maximized what he was able to do at the junior level, but now has this hybrid step to the next. And I'll be honest, I thought that because of how deep Michigan State was, I didn't know where Romani was going to fit in this group. And he found a way to fit right in there. And he's like, top 6, middle 6, wherever, and he's making an impact. Scoring goals in college hockey, very difficult to do. He hasn't really had too much of a problem with it. He's made himself a factor. And you look at kind of guys that were drafted much higher, Caden Lindstrom, the transition's been a lot more difficult. Romani, meanwhile, putting up the points at a pretty high level in terms of where he's at. So yes, I do think that he has NHL capabilities. I think we've seen some of the things he's still doing. He was also a guy that needed to get stronger physically. That's what college really does allow you to, it gives you a little more time in the weight room. The nutrition, the strength programs are a lot different at the collegiate level, especially at a Big Ten school like Michigan State. So I think that he's benefited from that. And because of that, now you kind of have this option in figuring out, what do we do next with this player? It's still a little unclear to me in terms of the guys that were drafted out of the CHL. Is like that 2-year rule still going? Are we going to have guys that if they go in? So
apparently
what's
not,
your
Chris.
understanding?
I just read it today in The Athletic. I believe it was the Thomas Drance piece, but it might have been Harmon Dahl. That Romani, because of the move to NCAA hockey, the Canucks will retain the rights through 2028. But I do, you're right. There was some ambiguity on all of this. So that
was, and that was one of the things I was trying to get clarity on as we start looking at some, because guys like Romani, do they have to make that decision? So, and that's kind of how it works for players that are drafted out of the USHL and other places, more traditional path, where so long as they are a bona fide college student, that's when the track, in terms of when they retain rights for. And I think that's a great thing, because to me, Romani has now an opportunity to stay at Michigan State if he wants to, be the guy next year, or one of the guys, which we've seen other players do. And I think what we've seen, and Quinn Hughes was a guy that spent 2 years in college. Cale Makar, 2 years in college. All these guys, it seems like 2 has been the magic number for the top end players. And so a lot of those guys skip the step of the AHL and go right into the NHL. Where the Canucks are as an organization, you've got to, you may not want to be patient, but players like Romani, where it's almost found money if you get that player in the 6th round, you say, all right, let's make sure we're making the right decisions for his development, because this is a guy that's going to help us and making a decision. Yeah. I think you could step into the AHL and be fine, but still it's maybe that extra year, another year of strength training will help him.
Yeah. And let's stay in the state of Michigan here for a second. And incidentally, really big week for that state. Both their schools are in the NCAA Sweet 16 and in the NCAA ice hockey tournament. And Chris is coming to us from Iowa, and both of the schools there are in the NCAA tournaments. You mentioned TJ Hughes, Chris. For many, he's the top college free agent available this year. We had one person say to us, he's the one guy who might actually have NHL skill and might be more than a bottom 6 forward in the league. But you tell me, what do you think of TJ Hughes in terms of his NHL player profile?
Yeah, I agree. I think people have been circling him for 3 years. He's had opportunity after opportunity to get out and get a contract. And, I think for me, I don't think it's a sure thing. It never really is with these players. They've got to go into the right situation. But I look at guys like Colin Graff that found the right situation for themselves, and San Jose. Some of these teams that are kind of on the rebuilding end, where there are more opportunities and a path to the NHL. Like, I think TJ is probably going to need some AHL time. I don't see him jumping immediately into an NHL lineup. But at the same time, the skill, the skating, I think all of those things match up. He did get stronger physically in college. He has been an incredibly productive player. He's now the Hobey Baker. He's very much in the discussion for the Hobey Baker Award. I think that there's always a little bit of skepticism with college free agents, especially the guys that are a little bit on the older end. He is at 24 now, so you're thinking like developmental runway. It's a little bit different. But he's one of those guys where yes, in terms of the skill level, the hockey sense, the different things, he has produced wherever he has been throughout his entire career. Those are players that you say, okay, well, let's see what we can get out of this player, and let's put him in positions to succeed. He's not going to be a guy that I think finds a role like many of the college free agents that we have. It's kind of going to be like he's going to hit or he's going to miss completely. That's kind of what it feels like with him. So it's a very feast or famine situation. But I think he's the kind of player absolutely worth a contract, absolutely worth the effort to go. And I think a lot of NHL teams are going to kick the tires there.
And what about the rest of that free agent class? Anybody on your radar that you're keeping an eye on? We're starting to see guys whose seasons have ended signing with NHL teams. Yeah.
This year's class is kind of all over the map. There's a lot of decent goalies. We just saw Josh Kotai from Augustana sign. He had a .930 career save percentage. I think was one of the higher end goalies available as a free agent. You're going to see some of the guys. Hayden Stavroff at Dartmouth. He's in his second year. Kind of out of nowhere. I don't think anybody expected to see this level of production for him as a sophomore. Was a very productive player in the BCHL, but still is a guy that I think that we need to learn a little bit more about. It's all the ECAC guys, that there's been a much higher scoring ECAC this year, which always makes me a little bit leery because that's typically a very difficult league to score in. But we've got, Ethan Wittenbach, the leading scorer in the country, is in that conference. Stavroff is the leading goal scorer in the country. He's in that conference. So I'm a little curious to see, like, in this new college era, did that shift a little bit in the ECAC? But Stavroff doesn't have the prototypical size, but one of his teammates does. Hank Cleaves, who has a little bit more versatility, a little bit more two-way capabilities, and is 6'4". Those are guys that I think are going to continue to generate quite a bit of interest. You're usually looking for those bigger players at Michigan as well. Josh Ernesi is another player that I think a lot of NHL teams have been asking about for years. Probably plays down the lineup. So, you're probably not going to find a lot of top six. There's no top six sure things. I think you're hoping with TJ Hughes, or you're hoping with the Stavroff. But I think more than anything, you're often looking for those depth players, and some of those guys have already signed. Like Dylan Hritskovian, that have that versatility to find a role, and I think that's often what you're looking for with these players. But in the new era of college hockey, with all these CHL players now getting to extend their careers, we're going to have a lot more discussions about these college free agents. I think the quality will only go up from here.
There's a lot of Canucks fans, Chris, saying, boy, if we get McKenna with the first overall, we should certainly sign his line mate, J.J. Wybush at Penn State. What do you think? Does he have NHL? Does he have the NHL goods?
I think he can play. I think he's got a chance, and I think him and Matt DeMarsico, two guys at Penn State, I think they both have done enough to earn an opportunity. Wybush was a red hot scorer for a bit, cooled off a little down the stretch. He's been very clutch too. Teams that resonates with teams. I think a lot of these guys, it's worth that contract, but it's the path to NHL is much tougher for players like, Wybush, DeMarsico, who I think are really talented college players that are going to have to probably carve out a role for themselves at the NHL level.
And lastly, my friend, you said it is a good year to be drafting a top four defenseman. We got one in our province here, Carson Karls up in Prince George, but there's Big Smits, the Latvian. There's Chase Reed in the Ontario Hockey League. And, of course, there's the aforementioned Keaton Verhoff down at North Dakota. Who do you have as the top-ranked defenseman of that group? And a potential number three overall this year, right?
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Right now, for me, it is Chase Reed in the lead at that point from the Sioux Greyhounds. But there's been a lot of kind of like maneuvering among these players. It was Verhoff for a bit, it was Carls for a bit, it was Smits for a bit, it was Reed for a bit. It's been Daxon Rudolph a time or two. Like there's all these different players that we're kind of talking about as potential top end guys, and there's a lot of defensemen even further down the board, guys like Xavier Villeneuve or Ryan Lynn and others that you can find as some kind of more value that still have that potential top four upside that, you got to wait out. But for Verhoff has the best athletic toolkit of that whole group. He's got the size. I think the skating ability is just fine. I think that, the questions about some of his hockey sense and decision-making, that is kind of picked up more, which is why you're starting to see him slip down a little bit. Carls is a little bit more of that versatile player. Reed is an elite skater, tremendous offensively, has size. So like he's kind of, to me, the modern defenseman total package kind of player. But I'm really also, Daxon Rudolph is that guy that just keeps creeping up the list here, playing for Prince Albert and being one of their top scorers. It's a really interesting time. So I think, as you're going to see that run on defensemen in that first little bit, none of it will shock me, just because I think that it's really comes down to preference and what those guys do. So I'm fascinated by the D class. I think there's a lot of talent there. There's probably some guys that won't quite work out the way that everybody expected, but I think that this group is really exciting.
Tremendous insight, Chris. Can't thank you enough. Very much appreciate this.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
That is Chris Peters, the content manager at Flow Hockey. You should follow his work there, and you should also listen to him weekly with our buddy Cam Robinson, Called Up, the Prospects podcast. Thanks, Chris. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks, fellas.
Sekeres and Price from the historic Wall Center, the Pacific Toyota dealer studio built by Arbor Lee. Big game downtown. Make Sheraton Vancouver Wall Center your home base for game night and beyond. Walk to the action. Sleep like a champ. Plan your stay at wallcenter.com. Well, with no news on a sale or update on the stadium, people are getting worried about the future of Whitecaps FC in Vancouver. Among them is former Whitecaps keeper David Osted, who has settled here in BC and started an online petition. It reads, the future of the Vancouver Whitecaps in Vancouver still feels uncertain. This club means a lot to people across the city and throughout BC. The Whitecaps are a big part of Vancouver's sporting culture and community. He goes on to write, I am David Osted. I once had the privilege of playing for the Caps. The team has been more than just a soccer club for many of us. It represents a lifetime of memories, achievements, and community bonds. Now working with Kamloops United Youth Soccer in BC's interior, I see firsthand the impact and inspiration the Whitecaps continue to provide to the younger generation province-wide. And, Jeff, we talked about those mini pitches they'll be building as part of the World Cup legacy alongside the provincial government. Blake and I have talked a little bit as well in terms of there will come a time where no news is bad news for the Whitecaps, in terms of people sitting there and asking themselves the question, do I want to continue to spend my time and money on this team if they're out the door at season's end? And you wonder if the timing of this petition from Mr. Osted is tied to happenings in U.S. markets that are seeking MLS teams. Like this story from Sports Business Journal today, Sacramento Republic FC, which is a USL franchise. There have been rumblings about a team in Sacramento for some time. They have plans to build a downtown stadium that will now seat 20,000 up to 27,000, privately financed by the owner, Wilton Rancheria. It would become the biggest soccer-specific facility in the United States, Jeff, and you're not building 20 to 27,000 seats for a USL club, right?
No, and it looks spectacular. The renderings there, it almost looks exactly like what we need here.
$350 million if you want to cut the check. Whitecaps off this week, but 6 players are away on international duty. Ralph Priso for Canada. We talked to Ralph on Friday. Sebastian Berhalter with the U.S. Kenji Cabrera with Peru. Rayan Alume, the dual Canadian-Tunisian national, who will play for Tunisia against Canada in Toronto in these friendlies. Mikhail Gerasimenkov with Moldova, and then Tate Johnson will be participating with a U21 USA team. Best of luck to them. We'll follow their progress, but needless to say, Ralph Priso in Canada is a big step up for a midfielder turned center back and getting some shine internationally on top of his club work.
Yeah, and just back to Ousted for a sec. Good on him for speaking up.
Yeah.
And look, we know that MLS Whitecaps don't have an illustrious history. They've been around 15 years or so. But I do wonder if we see others lending their voices to this. And, of course, the Whitecaps as an entity and a franchise go back better part of a half century in this city. And so, no, I mean, I think any sort of public statements, declarations from anybody that has strong ties to the organization, always enjoyed my dealings with David Ousted. And so I'm not surprised that he is one of the guys that's sort of stepping up here. And
really good egg. And Axel Schuster has messaged from the beginning, like, this is more than just a business deal. This is about community. This is about culture and what this team means to Vancouver and British Columbia. One more year for the soon-to-be Mr. Taylor Swift. Travis Kelce, Kansas City tight end, signing a new contract structured as a one-year deal for $12 million. There's incentives involved. You'll see it listed as a 3-year deal, but that's done entirely for cap purposes. If he does want to play after this season, the deal will have to be renegotiated. As currently structured, it's set up to be his final season, after which he would retire, and the cap hit would be spread over those additional 2 years. Seahawks making some news as well. They match a Jacksonville offer sheet to depth wide receiver Jake Bobo, who stays in Seattle on a 2-year deal. And they're also rumored to be interested in Miami Dolphins running back Devin Achane. Now, Miami has restructured his contract. They said they're not trading him, but that hasn't stopped the Seahawks from calling, and many around the league still believe the dual threat running back will be traded. Seahawks still without a starting tailback, Jeff, with Kenneth Walker off to Kansas City, and we'll see about Zach Charbonnet and whether he's back from that serious knee injury for the start of the season. Are you ready for some baseball? I sure am. And Major League Baseball has released its power rankings heading into the 2026 season. There they are, the two-time reigning defending world champion LA Dodgers are tops, but right behind them, the Toronto Blue Jays and Seattle Mariners. The, of course, World Series runner-up, American League Championship Series between the Jays and M's last year promises to be another fun season, I think, for our teams of interest and local baseball fans. The competition for the final Blue Jays roster spots is nearly done. You're down to 2 pitchers, Chase Lee and Spencer Miles, for the final bullpen spot. And the final bench spot, either Davis Schneider or Leo Jimenez. Jimenez is the better glove, Schneider the better bat. They are all making the trip to Toronto. That decision is anticipated tomorrow in advance of the season opener Friday against the Athletics. They do have to make the decisions tomorrow, though, because Major League Baseball games start tomorrow.
Yeah.
Jeff.
And opening day is opening day. You're going to get the hype and the buzz and everybody. It is weird that the A's are in Toronto.
Yeah.
But whatever. I mean, they got to be there at some point through the season, but just a strange opening series opponent.
It is a little. And, of course, they're in Sacramento, at least for now, on their way to Vegas. And by the end of the week, we should know which Jays prospects are assigned to the Vancouver Canadians, who, of course, start their season in April. We're wondering about the shortstop, Arjun Nimmala, still one of the Jays' top prospects, but also their number 4 prospect, a left-handed pitcher named Johnny King, who was sensational in Dunedin last year. He would be quite a coup if he starts the year in Vancouver. And JoJo Parker, their first-round pick last year, a shortstop from the Mississippi high school ranks, has shown himself so advanced with the bat in spring training. There are now people saying they suspect he will be a Vancouver Canadian at some point this season. He's quite advanced for a high school hitter, and he turns 20 in August, so we may see both of the Blue Jays' top position prospects, Nimmala and Parker, with the Canadians in short order this season. Results of the poll question from yesterday. We asked you, is Adam Foote one and done as Canucks head coach? Did you see the results?
I did not,
You
but
wanna
I'm
take a
guessing
guess?
it was an overwhelming yes.
It was yes.
75?
77. Pretty good, Jeff. Range of replies. C2 says if they want to be a serious franchise, then yes. He's not developing the kids we have. Don't let him ruin the next batch, too. Fire Foote, hire Manny the second the season ends. Agent Provocateur says he was the wrong choice to begin with. Should have been Manny from the beginning. But we did see a lot of this as well. Greschuk, Canucks need him for one more season to suck and then draft Landon DuPont. Yes, one more year of tank commanding, said many. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program and beyond. I'm so gung-ho on the Vancouver Warriors, I had them going.
We were drunk on the Warriors yesterday.
I had them going a round further
You're projecting.
than they actually did last year. I said they lost to Buffalo in the finals. They lost to Buffalo in the semifinals of the NLL playoffs. So my apologies for that. Although I did get a nice note from our former intern, Jaden Teja, who's covering the Vancouver Warriors, saying he's loving the Warriors coverage on the show and said he's had so much fun covering them this year. He says, hot take, they're the best team in BC right now. They might be. I mean, it's Whitecaps or Warriors, right?
Yeah. But it's funny, just
None of the hockey teams.
around the hockey club these days, like the crossover of staff, like the ones that cover both, they're counting down the days till the end of the hockey season.
That's right.
But they are fired up about what's possible for the Warriors.
Covering some Warriors playoffs.
Yeah.
They have clinched a bid. Playoff tickets are on sale at Rogers Arena to go see this outstanding Warriors club. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Costs you nothing. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Jeff's got a game to cover tonight, so you're going to want to listen or watch Rinkwide Vancouver following the Ducks and Canucks, and we'll see you on Thursday.
Yes, I am taking tomorrow.
PJ's in tomorrow.
So you get JP, and then now you get PJ tomorrow.
That's right.
And yes, I'll be back on Thursday.
Keep it local.